Aric Almirola is expected to return to Stewart-Haas Racing for 2022. NASCAR is reinstating masking policies starting this weekend at Watkins Glen, and Justin Mark says that Rasha Singh is bringing no funding to the team. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We've got a lot of NASCAR stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight into those very quickly. We're going to start off and go ahead about the Darlington Truck Series race, as they have a title sponsor for that weekend. The title sponsor for that race is going to be called the In It to Win It 200. Really cool name, my honest opinion. Really cool that another company is coming in to sponsor for that event. I believe it has helped people get vaccinated, so it's really cool that they're doing that overall. And it's great to see that Darlington, the Truck Series race, has a sponsor for that weekend. Really good news overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about all the entries for the ARCA race that are basically from the top echelon series. There are a lot of drivers that are going to be making one-off starts this year, and they're going to be a little more experienced at Watkins Glen. We're going to start off, first of all, with Austin Hill, as Austin Hill is going to drive the number 1 for Hattori Racing at Watkins Glen in the ARCA race, and he will be getting a little more experience for the Truck Series race as well. I would not be surprised if Austin Hill runs really well this weekend. He's really fast, especially when he drives one car. The Hattori Racing car, especially at Watkins Glen, tends to run really fast. So I expect Austin Hill to bring a lot of speed to the table, and I think that Austin Hill will be really fast during that weekend. The next entry we're going to talk about is Brandon Jones, as Brandon Jones is going to drive the 25 event Trading Motorsports at Watkins Glen in the ARCA race as well. Brandon Jones, I think, will have a very good chance of competing for the victory. Brandon Jones is really fast when he's racing ARCA, and he's driving for one of the best teams overall. So I think that car has a potential to contend for the victory, and I think Brandon Jones will contend for the win there. The next entry we're going to talk about is Austin Wayne Self. Austin Wayne Self is going to be driving a 32 at Watkins Glen for Kevin Sawinski in that ARCA race. I'm not sure how good the cars are going to be that he's going to be running, but it's really cool that Austin Wayne Self is getting a little more experience. I'm wishing the best of luck in that event. Hopefully he'll do very well. The next entry we're going to talk about is Carson Osbar, as he'll drive the 50 for Nice Motorsports at Watkins Glen in that ARCA race. I think Carson Osbar has a really good shot of winning. Carson Osbar seems to be really fast wherever we go in the Truck Series, regardless of what car he's in, especially with the Nice Motorsports coming in. And I think that Carson Osbar will be really fast. And the final 2 entries, we're going to have 3 more entries to go over. The next one is Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst will drive the 54 car for DJR Racing at Watkins Glen. Now, I think Riley Herbst honestly will be pretty decent in this event, considering, I'm not a big fan of Riley Herbst. I think he'll do pretty decent in the event. I think he'll show a lot of speed, and honestly, wouldn't be surprised if he gets top 5 or top 10 this weekend. I know he's going to be pretty good equipment, but I think he gets potential top 5 or top 10 this weekend for DJR. The next entry we're going to talk about is Chase Briscoe. Chase Briscoe is going to be driving number 14 for Chad Bryant Racing at Watkins Glen this weekend in that event as well. I would not be surprised if Chase Briscoe wins the event. Chase Briscoe is probably also my pick going to event as well. We've seen how well he can do in the ARCA West race at Sonoma. I think he'll run extremely well. He's a good road course racer as well. So I think that's going to overall help him contend for the victory. And the final entry we're going to talk about is Chase Purdy. Chase Purdy will be driving the number 63 at Watkins Glen with Bahama Buggies or Burgers basically going to be sponsoring him in that event. I think Chase Purdy will struggle a little bit. I know he has a lot of ARCA experience and may help him a little bit, especially with how much experience he's had in trucks here. But I think he'll struggle a little bit in that event, in my honest opinion. Wishing all the Cup Series, wishing all the Truck Series, Mini Series, Cup Series drivers that are running the event the best of luck, and hopefully they will run really well in that event as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Spencer Boyd. Spencer Boyd is going to be driving the number 90 for DGM Racing for multiple races starting at Richmond International Speedway. He's expected to run 4 or 5 races for the team. Mini Doge will be the sponsor for him. I would not be surprised if he runs the majority of the rest of the season in that number 90 car. Spencer Boyd, I think, is a very talented driver. He's a blue-collar driver who seems to get the best out of his equipment, regardless of what team's in. I know he's not been too impressive in the Truck Series starts. He's ran for Young's Motorsports over the last couple of years, except he does have 1 win at Talladega, though he kind of got gifted that win, to be honest with you. But I would not be surprised if we see Spencer Boyd run extremely well. I'm wishing him the best of luck, and hopefully Spencer Boyd will run really well in that event as well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about NASCAR and Allied Sports. It was announced today by Justin Maliglo that NASCAR is expected to announce a joint venture to bring gaming and racing simulation to race fans at select race tracks on the remainder of 2021 schedule starting this weekend at Watkins Glen. I think this is really cool. Bringing gaming and racing together, I think, is going to be overall really big for the sport. And these 1v1 competitions are also going to bring something that you can do at the track as well. It brings more investment to the track and more good things overall for the track as well. To me, I think that this is really big overall for every single track, because again, the more stuff you can bring into the track, the more stuff that fans can do around the track, the better, especially since, with COVID-19 and not everything being back to 100% currently at the moment. It's great to see that they are bringing more to the track, and I think that the more stuff you can bring to the track, the better it's going to be. So I think that this is a really, really cool and really awesome venture that they're doing overall. And I'm definitely looking forward to see this, because hopefully this goes really, really well, and I'm definitely looking forward to this for sure, and I'm really happy about it. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the starting lineups for the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series races this weekend at Watkins Glen. First one we're going to take a look at is the Truck Series race. Austin Hill is going to be starting on the pole for that event, as he's coming in this race after winning the last Truck Series race at Knoxville International Speedway. I think Austin Hill will be really, really fast in the event, but my pick to win that race is going to be Sheldon Creed. Sheldon Creed seems to run really, really well on road course tracks, and I think that Sheldon Creed is going to pick up, I think, his second or third victory of the 2021 season. I think he wins at Watkins Glen in the Truck Series. Next in starting lineup, we're going to take a look at the Xfinity Series. Justin Allgaier is going to be starting on the pole for that event. I pick going into that is going to be Austin Cindric. I think Austin Cindric has been really, really good at Watkins, especially the last couple times we've ran her. He won the last time we ran her back in 2019. So I do think that experience is going to come into play, and I think we're going to see Austin Cindric win the Xfinity Series race. And finally, up to the Cup Series race, let's talk about that. Brad Keselowski and Joe Logano are going to be starting on the front row. Now, Chase Elliott is expected to start a little bit farther back, but he is my pick going into that event. Chase Elliott is one of the last 2 times he's been there at Watkins Glen, so I think that Chase Elliott is overall going to win. Don't be surprised to see guys like Kyle Larson, Martin Truex Jr., a lot of the Hendrick cars be up front, a lot of the Joe Gibbs Racing cars be up front. I think those are going to be the guys who are going to be contending overall for the victory in the event, and I think that those will be the fastest cars in the event. We're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Daniel Suarez. As Daniel Suarez is going to be making his Trams Am debut this weekend at Nashville Street Course. The Trams Am Series will be racing the day before on that Saturday. He'll be racing in that event to get a little bit more experience for the Cup Series race at Watkins Glen. I think that this experience will help Daniel Suarez. I think Daniel Suarez is a very, very solid road course racer, but it really overall does not help that he's going to need a little more experience going into that event. I think Daniel Suarez will run really, really well in that event. I don't think he's ever, like I said, this is his first ever Trans Am debut. So I'm very interested to see how he's going to do in that event overall. But I'm definitely overall wishing him the best of luck. And I believe this is also going to be bought up by Justin Marks as well. I think Justin Marks also is competing in that Trans Am event as well. So Justin Marks is going to be able to give good pointers into that event. It's really cool to see that Daniel Suarez is going to be competing not only in the Cup Series race, but he's going to be competing in the Trans Am race as well. I'm definitely looking forward to see that for sure. Hopefully Daniel Suarez is really, really fast. I think Daniel Suarez, if he can get up front, especially how good of a driver of road courses he really, really is, and how underrated he is on road courses, I think, especially since he's really good at Watkins Glen, I think that he'll run really, really well in that event, and I'm definitely wishing him the best of luck overall as well. And hopefully he's going to run really, really well in that event as well. And now we're going to go and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Chad Chastain. As Chad Chastain is going to be making his NASCAR Truck Series debut this year, we're at Watkins Glen, driving the number 45 for Nice Motorsports. Chad Chastain is Ross Chastain's brother. Now, Ross Chastain was originally supposed to drive this truck at Watkins Glen, but because of the rules that NASCAR has in place in regards to the championship, no Cup Series drivers can compete in the final 8 races. So, instead of having Ross Chastain drive the car, they're going to have Chad Chastain drive the car. Now, I'm not sure how much experience Chad Chastain has when it comes to late models and racing overall, so this may be one of the first and only few times that he has raced again. I don't know how much of a background when he tells when it comes to racing, but it doesn't 100% surprise me at this point that we're going to see Chad Chastain's brother running the event. I'm definitely wishing him the best of luck overall. The Nice Motorsports trucks tend to be really, really fast at points, especially looking at cars so far this year, and when Ross has gotten into those trucks. So I do think overall he has a really good shot of contending for maybe like a top 20 or top 25. I know that's a little bit of lower goals for that team, but you have to remember the Truck Series is extremely competitive. So I'm definitely wishing the best luck overall to Chad Chastain, and I think that he'll do very, very well in that event. I'm wishing the best luck and good luck to Chad Chastain here in that event. And now we're going to go and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about R.C. Anderson. As R.C. Anderson is going to be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut this year at Watkins Glen, driving for the number 15 for Rick Ware Racing. R.C. Anderson has attempted to run multiple IndyCar starts, including this year attempted to run the Indianapolis 500, unfortunately failing to qualify with Top Gun Racing. So he has a lot of road course experience, Plus, he has competing in the Indy license. I'm not sure if he's won races or not at this current moment, but he's a guy that has a lot of road course experience. And I'm not 100% surprised if Rick Ware is partnering up with him. We have started to see a lot more IndyCar drivers come over to NASCAR. We've seen James Davison come over to the Cup Series. You have potential Marco Andretti coming into this series. You have Santino Ferrucci is competing for Sam Hunt Racing this year. You have Sage Karam is going to be in the Indianapolis Road Course for Jordan Anderson Racing. And now you have another IndyCar driver who's coming in here and racing for this team. I'll be honest, I don't expect R.C. Anderson to run really, really well. Not because I don't think R.C. Anderson is a good driver, but I think just because of the limits of the equipment he has overall, I think he's going to struggle in that event. But I'm really happy to see that we're going to see another IndyCar driver, and I love that we're seeing more and more of a crossover when it comes to drivers running certain events, and I'm wishing him the best luck this weekend here at Watkins Glen, and hopefully he runs really, really well. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Austin Cindric. Austin Cindric is making his final Cup start of this year next week at Indianapolis Road Course, once again driving the number 33 with Verizon backing him in that event. Austin Cindric has already had success at that racetrack, ran really, really well in the Indianapolis Road Course Xfinity Series race. He's been really, really impressive in his Cup Series start this year. If not for a mistake at Road America and basically crashing out early in the race with shock issues and the car basically breaking into pieces, Austin probably would have overall contended for the win against Chase Elliott. I mean, at points he was almost a second faster. So I think Austin Cindric has honestly got a really, really good chance of winning his final Cup start of this year. I think he's going to have a lot of speed. I think he's going to be really, really quick in that event. And hopefully Austin Cindric runs really, really well. I like to see him maybe win a race and shock the whole field again. I think that he's going to have some competition. I think Chase Briscoe is going to run really well. I think all the usual road courses suspects like Mark Truex Jr., Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott are going to be competing overall for the victory. But I would not be surprised overall if we do see Austin Cindric go out there and win. I'm definitely wishing Austin Cindric overall the best of luck in that event, and hopefully he runs really, really well, and hopefully he gets a good run. So I think it'd be really cool to see him and Austin Cindric get his first Cup Series win and his final start at the Indianapolis Road Course. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Rob Raimich, as Rob Raimich is going to become the Senior VP and GM at Texas Motor Speedway immediately. Rob Raimich is succeeding Eddie Gossage, who's been running the track for about 25 years since the track basically opened up. Eddie Gossage has been running the racetrack, and now it looks like Rob Raimich is going to be taking over those duties going forward. I'm really, really excited to see what Rob Raimich can do. I really don't know much about Rob Raimich, but I want to see a couple things done with Rob coming in. First, I like to see the old configuration of Texas Motor Speedway come back. If they can get the old configuration of Texas Motor Speedway back, I think that's going to be really, really good for the racing, because I do think that the racing has been affected. Second thing, no more PJ1. Texas Motor Speedway does not need any more PJ1. The IndyCar Series has overall been affected by the issues of PJ1, and I think if they bring more PJ1 onto the racetrack, I think it's going to create more problems than solutions overall. And finally, number 3, hopefully we can bring IndyCar back. The fact that they are changing GMs, I think is really, really cool. Eddie Gossage had good moments as a GM and the president, and now that we have Rob Raimich basically taking over for a very, very long time, I hope he does a lot of good things and doesn't become Eddie Gossage 2.0. That's all I really want at this point, is for Rob Raimich to basically do his job and do a really, really good job in his first time. But I'm wishing him the best luck overall. Hopefully he does a really, really good job basically taking over and running his operations. It is a lot of pressure, especially for a guy. He does have a lot of experience. Keep that in mind. But hopefully he'll be able to run this track for a very, very long time. And hopefully he'll do really, really well. And I'm definitely wishing him the best overall, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we were talking about SMI and Nashville Fairgrounds. It was reported earlier today by Matt Weaver at AutoWeek.com that he says the deadline for SMI and Nashville Fairgrounds passed as of August 1st. He also said Marcus says he doesn't know what the new deadline is. We have high hopes here. Marcus also did mention that he's hoping to have NASCAR races as early as 2023 at the track. This means that the deadline has been extended a little bit, so that means they're probably going to be waiting a little bit. Now, they do have a meeting coming up on Tuesday. We're probably going to see public discourse in that as well. There has been a lot of tension in regards to the Nashville Fairgrounds for a very, very long time. NASCAR has been trying to push a return to the Nashville Fairgrounds, and I do think that SRX race really, really overall help for the push to continue happening for this track. Again, there has been a lot of people that have been against it, but you also have a lot of people that are saying at this point, we just have to accept it. At this point, they're expecting it to come back. I think that this is really, really good news, except that they are delaying a little bit, but I think the fact that they're still keeping up with it, you have the support of the city, you have the support of the mayor, and majority of the Fair Board, 3 out of the 4 people are in support of this, so Hopefully this does go through really, really soon and we can get started on renovating tracks. I think Nashville Fairgrounds for that track because they want to modernize the track, and I think that they can do that overall, get the track renovated, repaired, and all that stuff, and get everything situated at that track. But I think it's really, really good that we're hearing this news. The more that we hear about Nashville Fairgrounds and the more we can talk about it, the more eyes and ears that we can overall get on it. So I think it's really cool overall that we're continuing to hear more about the Nashville Fairgrounds, and hopefully things continue to go overall more in the right direction. I think it'll be really, really good overall, and hopefully things continue to go in the right direction overall for the Nashville Fairgrounds. And I do think that it won't be 2023. I think it'll probably be 2024, the earliest that we are going to have that coming up. But I think it's cool that we're continuing to hear news about that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Cajsgarro. As Cajsgarro will be driving the 002 for Young's Motorsports this weekend at Watkins Glen. Cajsgarro, I think, is a very, very talented road course racer. He already raced earlier this year in the 02 car at Circuit of the Americas. It also, I believe, raced at the Daytona road course for the team as well. And unfortunately crashed at Daytona road course, but he had a really, really strong run for Young's Motorsports in the Truck Series race at Circuit of the Americas. Contended for the victory overall throughout the day, ran top 5, had one of the fastest cars throughout the day overall. Unfortunately, he kind of had some pit strategy to kind of cost him at the end of the race, and his car kind of fell back, and a couple of the guys like Ty Gill and Tyler Irkham really, really took off. But I think that Cajsgarro has a really good shot. If not contending for the victories, I think he'll have a shot to do that. I think that he'll at least contend for top 5 and top 10. I think especially with how good he is on road courses overall. Remember his first ever Cup Series start? He almost won that event, finishing 7th, and he led laps and was the first driver in a long time to lead laps in his first ever Cup Series debut. So I think it's overall really, really good news to hear that Cajsgarro is back, and I think that he'll run really, really well. I hope that Caz gets an opportunity to go full-time, maybe for college racing in Xfinity Series, but I'm definitely wishing the best luck over to Cajsgarro, and hopefully he will get a good opportunity here going forward. But really cool to see he's running the Truck Series event. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Nashville and NASCAR. According to Adam Stern, it was reported that TM NASCAR, Trademark NASCAR, is so keen on Nashville as a market that it's looking at trademarking the term NASCAR. If you look at a lot of the places when it comes to ratings and look at one of the fastest growing cities right now, it is Nashville. When you look at the rating side of things for NASCAR, what is one of the biggest areas when it comes to ratings? Nashville. And you've seen a huge movement for motorsports overall. For a long time, about 10 years, we really haven't had racing, but this year you have the SRX coming to the Nashville Fairgrounds. You had that earlier this year. You have an IndyCar race that's happening this weekend, as a matter of fact, at the Music City GP this weekend on the street course. And you had NASCAR about a month or two ago. They raced at the Nashville Super Speedway. And you've also had a big push for the Nashville Fairgrounds to come back that we talked about in a second. Nashville also is hosting the awards banquet this year, once again this year, and the burnouts on Broadway on Nashville are coming back as well. You look at the market where everything's going. Nashville is becoming the capital South, probably the fastest growing city, faster growing than a lot of the other major cities. And when you look at that, I think that's one of the reasons why NASCAR is trying to capitalize. And I think that if there is a track that does deserve to have 2 dates in 2 races, I think it is Nashville. Nashville Fairgrounds, and I think Nashville Super Speedway, again, they can't happen back-to-back weeks, but I think that you can have both of those coexisting, and I think that it'd be really, really good for the sport overall if you could have both of those coexisting. To me, I think that this is overall extremely good news, especially for the future, and man, it's really, really cool to see that overall, and great news overall for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we were talking about the next-gen chassis. There was a report that came out very, very recently talking about how much it's going to cost for the next-gen chassis. And it says that Technics is charging $28,000 for each chassis with everything included. Each team can buy up to 7 chassis per driver per season. Apparently, this is about half of what it usually costs to get a chassis. Now, if a team has a chassis that basically breaks and crashes, they would have to pay once again for that. I think that's actually really, really cheap considering other chassis that have been around. I mean, the Cup Series chassis currently, I believe, are about $50,000 to $56,000. So they are much more expensive compared to what they are expected with the next-gen car. The next-gen car is expected at the moment to be a little bit more expensive to buy the parts and pieces, but as time goes on, because you're going to be saving a lot of money and you can reuse these cars for over time and for years, you could probably use that. And I think that overall, the fact that it's going to be only $28,000, when I read this report, I was extremely shocked that it was going to be that cheap. I expected it to be way more expensive, to be honest with you. The fact that it was only $28,000 for the next-gen chassis is really, really crazy. But if it's going to be that cheap, I expect this car to be a lot cheaper than what we thought. Again, there's going to be a lot of different components. It is basically getting bought. This is the first like spec car in a long time since basically the car tomorrow. So overall, it's really good to see that it's going to be a little more cheaper for the next gen chassis. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Michael Annett. As Michael Annett has been medically cleared to race after his surgery that took place last month. He'll be back at Watkins Glen this weekend. Michael Annett had surgery over while he apparently had fractured his leg, if I'm not mistaken, and unfortunately he was supposed to race the Nashville truck race. He had to sit out, Chris Winham took over. He had to sit out Atlanta, and I believe it was Austin Dillon took over for him in the one, and he also sat out the last just before we went on break, and Josh Berry took over for him really, really well. It's great to see that Michael Annett is back. Now, Michael Annett, I'm really hope he does really, really well. I'm wishing the best of luck that he's back. I hope he runs really, really well, because I want to see Michael Annett come back and be really, really strong. And I've seen a lot of times where people have injured themselves that they've come back much stronger, been better, and I think it's really cool to see he's come back. I mean, Michael Annett, he's getting really, really close in the points. He's about 30 points ahead of Riley Herbst now. So he's going to have to start overall busting ass and starting to work himself to go up there and contend and try to overall win some races. I think that he's might need to win a race. I think with how close Riley Herbst has been getting, especially how decent Riley Herbst is on road course overall, I think Michael Annett is going to start having to haul ass a little bit. But to me, it's really good to see that Michael Annett is coming back. I expected him to come back, to be honest with you. But the fact that after having an injury, it sucks that he had an injury, but it's really good to hear that he is going to be back racing. And hopefully he'll recover very, very soon. And it's great news overall for sure. As I'm currently editing today's video, it was just revealed by Adam Stern that Hailie Deegan says she hopes to make her NASCAR Xfinity Series debut next year in a few races on top of running full-time again in the Camping World Truck Series in 2022. In my honest and sincere opinion, I think that this overall is a very, very good move. She's not just jumping straight up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. She's dipping her toes into the NASCAR Xfinity Series and getting a few starts, but she's basically going to be focusing full-time on the Truck Series. In my opinion, getting acclimated to these NASCAR Xfinity Series cars, I think is a really, really good move for her overall, in my honest opinion. Now, the big question is what team would she drive for on a part-time basis? I think of two teams. First one is Team Penske. Team Penske is planning on running Cup drivers, and apparently according to Jordy Bianchi, it was reported about a week or two ago, that Team Penske is planning on running a lot of Cup Series drivers in their NASCAR Xfinity Series number 22 car, but there's a certain amount of races that they're not allowed to run the Dasher Cash races and the NASCAR playoff races for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race as well. So, what do they end up doing, in my honest opinion? I think they put potentially Hailie Deegan, maybe they get Todd Gillen to run a couple races, but I think Hailie Deegan could be a perfect candidate to get a few starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Team Penske. Now, how many races Hailie Deegan will going to run, perhaps? I would say maybe 4 or 5 races next year. I think at most she'll run is 4 or 5. Just dip her toes in the sand a little bit, run a couple races, get used to the NASCAR Xfinity Series cars, and see what she'll do. I also think it's going to be good because she's really going to be focusing on the Truck Series again. And I do think that with practice qualifying expected to come back next year, I do think that Hailie Deegan overall next year in 2022, I think compared to this year, I think that she will improve. And I think the more that she goes back to these tracks and the more she gets on these tracks, the more experience she has at these tracks, I think the better that she is going to become. And I think that Xfinity Series experience is actually going to help her a little more become a better driver overall as well. Now, I think also, like I said, it's a very, very smart play for her to jump up and learn a couple Xfinity Series races. Again, I see people saying, well, why is she jumping up to Xfinity running a lot of races? She's only running a few races next year. That's what she wants to do next year, and I think it's smart play by her. Now, I do think that eventually she is going to get up to Cup at some point one day. I would say probably like 2024, 2025 is probably with Stewart-Haas Racing. I think a lot of people think that she's going to end up replacing Kevin Harvick and driving the 4 car eventually, but I do think that eventually this could lead to her going to SHR's Xfinity Series program by 2023 or even 2024 perhaps. I'm not exactly sure, but I think that this overall is a very, very smart play for her. Get some more experience running in trucks full time next year, focusing on that, running as good as she can, learn how to be a little bit aggressive but not too overall aggressive, and run a few Xfinity Series races to get acclimated with those cars and focus on cars instead of racing in trucks. I think that this is a very, very good move, in my honest opinion, and hopefully she'll do very well next year in trucks and her couple select Xfinity Series starts next year. And now we're going to jump onto the first of 3 major stories of today's episode, as we are talking about Justin Marks. Now, Justin Marks was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio talking to the media today, and he says that Rasha Singh is not bringing any sort of sponsorship or funding to Trackhouse, and that's what he loves about him. Basically, Rasha Singh is bringing no funding. So Justin Marks, what he basically said is that he chose a driver that has a lot of talent over a driver that brings a lot of funding. I think he would have honestly preferred Kurt Busch, to be perfectly honest with you, but He was on the same team as Rasha Singh back in 2011, racing for Stacey Thompson's team. Let's not forget that they both raced on the same team back in 2011. He also raced around the time for Chip Ganassi Racing back in 2018. And Justin Marks has been a big fan of Rasha Singh's for a very long time. And I think what's really cool about this is that Rasha Singh has overall earned this ride on merit. Rasha Singh, I think, is a very, very talented driver. He's showing he's been able to do regardless of what equipment he's gotten in. I mean, look at Nice Motorsports. He drove for Nice Motorsports. I know they had GMS backing, but he drove for Nice Motorsports. Keep that in mind. And he ran extremely well. So I think what's really cool about this overall is the fact that Justin Marks is looking at a driver with a lot of talent. Now, like I said yesterday when it was announced that Justin Marks would be announced that Rasha Singh was going to be driving on Watermelon Day nonetheless, I think what they now have is a really good combination of drivers. You have Daniel Suarez, who has really recuperated his career, and you have Rasha Singh, a journeyman driver who's really proved himself, especially over the last couple months, has ran really well for Chip Ganassi Racing. So to me, overall, in my honest opinion, I think it's really cool that he earned this ride off of merit and didn't have to really do anything stupid to get in this ride and bring sponsorship like Kurt Busch would have had to bring. But I think it's really good news overall that a driver can earn the ride off of merit and not off of other factors, in my opinion. I think it's really cool. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we are talking about masks. This was reported yesterday. NASCAR will be requiring masks for all, regardless of vaccination status, in enclosed areas. Haulers, media centers, restrooms, infield centers, care centers, and suites. Starting this weekend, masks are not required outdoors, but they are expected to be close contact. Like I just mentioned a second ago, masks are going to be restarted once again in NASCAR. We haven't had masks in NASCAR really since around the Dakota weekend. They basically took them off starting around the Dover to the Dakota weekend, but masks are now going to be required for indoor events going forward. Even if you are vaccinated or not, you're going to be required to wear masks. In my opinion, I think that they're making the right call right here, to be perfectly honest with you, especially since if they don't do it, they're going to have people riling up and getting mad. It's like, why are you not doing this? You have people also on the other side. They're like that. At this point, with the Delta variant basically increasing a lot of COVID cases, and a lot of people, regardless of your vaccinated, because a lot of people that haven't vaccinated apparently have been getting infected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So overall, the fact that they have been, they're following the science and all stuff, that's what they say to me. I hope that this is the farthest we have to go when it comes to it. I hope that you don't start wearing masks outdoors. But I do think long-term, I think that masks are eventually going to be required outdoors once again, especially with we're in the middle. We're starting to see a resurgence of COVID-19. I think you're seeing a lot of event area stuff out of NASCAR that are basically requiring, there's some concert halls that are requiring you have to have a vaccination card to get into the events. And to me, it's just that I hope it doesn't get to that point where you're going to have a vaccine to get into races in the future. And I just hope it's something we don't have any issues with infield access. I personally don't think that we're going to have many more issues in this, but I would not be surprised if masks do become required, especially when we get around the playoffs. And if it starts slowing down a little bit, we may see things get rebutted a little bit, and we may see things get back to the point. But at this point, it is what it is. NASCAR is basically following the science. I just hope it doesn't get much worse than it is, and it has gotten to this point. Because, again, we just started really getting back to normal. Things were starting to really feel back to normal, and except that perhaps qualifying had not been back. But the fact that we're starting to see more and more of the stuff coming back really is kind of frustrating, to be honest with you. But it is what it is. They're following the rules and following the science and all that stuff, I guess. And to me, in my opinion, they just got to follow what they're going to follow. And it is a rule, and rules are rules, and they're going to follow it. Again, I saw a lot of people saying, oh, they're bringing back just because of New York. No, they said starting this week, and basically since, we've been off for a while, there has, like I said, been a resurgence of COVID-19 across the country. So to me, I think that they're making the right decision overall. Whether you like it or not, they're going to have to follow it at this point. It is what it is, and it is what it is at this point. So we'll have to keep watching as time goes on, but hopefully it doesn't become much more serious than it has become at this point, and hopefully things don't get worse. And now we're going to go and jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we are talking about Aric Almirola. Aric Almirola today was speaking to the media in regards to what is going on for this weekend. And he mentioned to the media today that he has a multi-year contract with Stewart-Haas Racing, and he is expected to return to Stewart-Haas Racing in 2022. Honestly, I'm not very surprised, to be honest with you. He also did mention that basically he doesn't really overall disclose when it comes to the contract talks, and that's one of the reasons why we haven't heard much in regards to that. He did say that he basically has a year-by-year basis with the team. He said he signed a multi-year contract last year. I know that Aric Almirola overall has struggled this year with Stewart-Haas Racing. That being said, I think Aric Almirola is a very, very good driver. This is the first year since starting for Stewart-Haas Racing. I think he has struggled. He did just also recently pick up a win at New Hampshire again. It also does help the fact that D does have that Smithfield back, and I think that overall is helping. But like I said, he won the last race at New Hampshire in really, really dominating fashion. I mean, he has overall the best car throughout the race. Now, if the Toyotas did not crash early event, there might have been a different story. But Aric Almirola earned that win straight up. And honestly, if you look at his stats over the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's been really, really improving with some top 15s and some top 20s. And I think with him saying that he can just get this off his mind and get off his plate. And now the big question is, what happens to some of the drivers in the free agency market with Aric Almirola basically saying that he's going to be coming back? What happens to Ryan Preece? Because a lot of people think Ryan Preece is going to be going to Stewart-Haas Racing next year. I think Ryan Preece goes to Xfinity and goes to Stewart-Haas Racing Xfinity Series program. I don't know if Tony Stewart's going to be putting much more up with Riley Herbst's crap. I know Riley Herbst has that Monster Energy backing, but at the same time, at some point, they're going to have to change it up with him. But I am really happy that Aric Almirola is expected to come back. I really like Aric Almirola. He's had a lot of bad luck this year, and not everything has really been his fault. You look at Dover, he's contending for a top 10. And unfortunately, he crashed out there due to a tire going down. You look at the Daytona 500, was running up front, had one of the fastest cars early in the race, and got taken out on the big one. He has had a lot of races where he hasn't had a lot of speed, but I think that other than Kevin Harvick, and Kevin Harvick struggled the points, I think that SHR overall has struggled this year, so I don't think it's just a Aric Almirola issue, but I do think next year that he'll eventually have to step it up going into next year. And I do think that Aric Almirola next year, especially in the expected return next year, I think that he'll be able to step him up and continue backing it up. Because I think Aric Almirola is a good driver. He earned this ride. He's got the funding to do it. I mean, if you bring funding, you're going to continue racing for the team. And again, I don't expect any changes for SHR going into next year. I think Chase Briscoe is going to be coming back. We don't know much about his contract, but he's expected to come back next year. And Cole Custer's dad is basically the general manager and president at Stewart-Haas Racing. So there is going to be no changes going there. So with Aric Almirola basically saying, again, it's not confirmed by Stewart-Haas Racing themselves, but Aric Almirola with him basically confirming, basically saying, oh, I'm pretty much, we're staying. It's just that we're not really disclosing what the contract situation is. I think it's good to see the Aric Almirola come back. I think the guys earned the ride. I know, like I said, this year he's not run really, really well. That being said, I'm really happy to see that Aric Almirola is expected to come back next year. And hopefully next year, going into 2022, he'll run extremely well for Stewart-Haas Racing. So, anyway, that's for today's NASCAR news video. And thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Support me at Patreon. Links in the description below for that. And comment your thoughts on today's episode. Do you think it's 100% confirmed that Aric Almirola is coming back next year or not? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about NASCAR reinstating mask mandates in indoors areas? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video. And I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content. Take care, everybody.